like there's a quorum, so let's have a roll call.
Mayor Pro Tem Bryant, Gene Porter,
Here.
George Jones,
Here.
Cliff Martin,
Here.
Commissioner Elliott,
Here.
Commissioner Madrid,
Here.
Randy Petty,
Here.
and Commissioner Levitt.
Okay, thank you for that, Vicki. And we'll have approval of the minutes, February 24th, 2021. Any changes or anything we need to address on that? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve them.
Move to approve. Oh, second.
Okay, a motion has been made to approve and a motion second. Just have a voice vote. Is that fine? Okay, everybody in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Hey, we need to do that individually, Vicki? Is that okay? All right. Okay, update on current projects. Clint Bunch?
I'll defer to Mr. Howalt. He'll go through the list and I'll pick up anything.
Okay.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Got quite a few. 7th Street, Phase 2, which is part of the project that goes from Maple Street to Main Street. We've completed the plans on that several years ago and been searching for construction dollars for that project. The DOT has recently put out their call for projects for the Transportation Project Fund. And so we are going to be submitting an application to try and receive funding through that. As part of that, it'll require a match. It's actually a 95% state funds, 5% local funds. However, to make our application, to bolster it a little bit, we're actually just I'm proposing to use our drainage fund for that match requirement, which will take about $1 million out of that fund to use towards that match. And I think we could be really successful with that application and be able to fund about a $5 million application with that. Which leads to the next project, which is Martin Luther King. And that project the design plans are at about 90% complete for that particular project. The opinion of probable cost on that project right now for the construction portion of it is around $6.5 million. Congresswoman Teresa Leger Fernandez actually put out, and she's one of our newer congresswomen, took over for Ben Ray Lujan for his spot as a representative. The federal government has actually started looking at what they used to call earmarks, direct appropriations again. And so they asked for projects that could potentially be eligible for those. And so we submitted a request to her office to consider that project for a direct appropriation. Another option that we may have actually is our road bonds are coming up this summer as well. If you recall, we have a cyclical road bond that comes up every 3 years. It generates currently around $3.5 million when we refund and refinance that series of bonds. And so depending on what happens with our 7th Street project, if we're not successful with the funds through the DOT, we could use the road bond projects for that, since that was our first priority. But if we are successful, then it frees up the funds to potentially go towards Martin Luther King. If we're successful with the direct appropriation from Congress on there, our next project that we have in line and that we've been working on is the Llano Drainage Project. If you recall, we hired HDR to put together some drainage improvement plans for us along Llano east of the roundabout. That particular set of plans is also, they're wrapping up that set of plans as well. And the drainage portion of that project is going to run around $3 million. So depending on how funding allocations fall, we may be able to actually complete several projects that we've had on the books for several years at this point in time. So it's exciting to see that we may have options when it comes to funding. It's something that we haven't had in the past, and I know that the DOT and their Transportation Project Fund, it's something that's really been pushed in the legislature and really funded over the last couple of years. the state has recognized that local municipalities don't necessarily have the funds necessary to be able to complete all the projects that they have in their backlogs, and so they created this particular program, like I said, at that 95% state funds, 5% local funds option. So, like I said, it's really exciting to see these options. Thornton and 7th Street intersection, if you recall, we received MAP funding for that project last year. We've did a portion of it, did some paving from 7th Street going south to US 6084. We did design plans on the intersection itself to re-concrete that intersection and make some ADA improvements and get some new conduit put in for the signals. That is currently being advertised to bid starting on Sunday. And so we'll have that out for bid over the next 30 days and be receiving bids on it. And then obviously once we receive those back, get that awarded to whatever contractor comes in as the low bidder. The roundabout project that we actually were on the minutes from the last meeting. I received a letter from the DOT. It's kind of a new letter that I've ever received from the DOT asking whether or not we were still seeking the funds. Which of course we responded back yes. And so when I actually had a meeting with the District 2 engineer last week, I asked him, well, this is kind of an odd letter. I've never seen it done this way before. And does that mean that we're receiving the funds? And he said, yes, we sent out those letters because we wanted to make sure that the communities that we were looking to fund still needed the funding. And so that's a good sign that we'll be receiving those funds for Norris Street and fixing the roundabout where we have the shoving and pushing with the asphalt in that area. Norris Street from the roundabout going south to 21st Street, we were awarded $1.5 million in capital outlay funds, and so we'll be able to do a mill and fill on that particular roadway. Obviously, we still have to wait for the contracts to come from the DOT. Those probably won't be until later this year when we receive those contracts, but it's a good sign and that we're going to be able to fix that roadway as well in the next year or so. Reuse, Phase 1D, which is the portion of the project that went from basically Thornton to the elevated storage tank. As you've all witnessed, the storage tank itself is complete. Their finish out crew is coming in on the 10th of May. And basically what that crew does is there's some piping within the pedestal itself that still has to be connected. The chlorination room still needs to be completed, but it'll take them about 20 days to wrap up their work there. And then they're also going to be, the pedestal itself gets painted. So it gives it a protective coat on it, anti-graffiti type paint that'll allow us to address graffiti if it should occur or paint over it. And so that crew will be handling the pedestal paint out as well. The Phase 2 project of the Phase 2 pond project of the reuse project. If you haven't been out to Colonial and looked at the new pond that we're constructing out there, it's in my opinion impressive. It's about 15 feet deep. They're finished with all the excavation work and the fine grading work. The liner crew is scheduled to come in on the 3rd of May. To start lining it. They're also the irrigation side of the contract. They're going to start digging for the wet well at the end of this week, and then start installing the wet well for the irrigation portion of the project the following week once the wet well is installed. And then once the liner is installed, there's some minor piping work that'll have to be finished out for the intake structure that goes over to the wet well. And once they're completed with that, we will start diverting the well waters that we have going to the front nine to start filling that pond. It's going to take us some time with the available water that we have from the 2 wells that we'll be able to pump out of to fill that pond to where then that will be the sole source of providing irrigation to the golf course once it is completed. Phase 2 transmission line of the reuse project, we're actually scheduled for the pre-bid meeting today. And so that's the portion of the project that will extend the reuse line from Thornton and 21st Street, basically Allsup's headquarters in that area, going north up Thornton all the way to Wilhite, and then east down Wilhite to the backside of Colonial Park, where we'll go into the golf course and then eventually be able to fill the ponds with reuse water to use for our irrigation purposes. As included with that project, we'll also be providing in-user connections to Berry Elementary as well as Gaddis Middle School. So when the schools are ready to tie into that system, reuse for those fields, they'll be able to do so. And then we also have a couple of bid alternates that have been kind of hanging around over the last couple of bids that we just simply haven't been able to fund as we've been trying to get the main transmission line in. And so based off funding, we'll see if we'll be able to award those as well. On that project, some of my concern in looking at bids as they come in, which are actually due on the 19th of May, is the price of PVC, as well as, I mean, all construction materials have escalated over the last several months. And so the price of PVC itself is up about 108%. And so our understanding is that hopefully by the end of May, the market will have stabilized and maybe come back down to what it was before. There's been issues with getting resin to build and manufacture the PVC with. Supply chains during the big freeze got behind, and so there's just been several events that has driven increase in construction materials. We pushed the bid opening date out till the middle of May, so hopefully that market will come back down and will be reflected in the bids that we receive for that particular project. So the FEMA floodplain update that we've been working on, they have completed the model. They were reviewing the model itself. There was a couple areas that they didn't feel like reflected what was actually maybe occurring out in the field. And so they are sending survey crews out next week to do some additional survey in a couple of those areas. Once they have that data back, then they'll plug that back into the model, rerun the model itself. And I'm not sure if I've mentioned it to this group or not, but the model actually, from the time they press the button and say go for it to run all of its calculations, takes about 24 hours for it to run. The technology and the modeling software that they have is very impressive and has advanced so much from the last time that we've done this. What it does is takes the entire rain event over all the drainage areas and basically puts a drop of water on every portion of the square footage of the area. And then it sits there and tracks that water and starts staging it up to where you can actually see where water goes. It takes into consideration from a topography standpoint your curb line elevations, your ditches, your storm drain. And so it's a much more accurate methodology that we have in place now than what we did about 10 years ago when we did this. So hoping to see a good reduction in what our floodplain and more accurate, should we say, representation of what actually occurs with flooding in our area so that we can have good and accurate floodplain maps for our citizens. And so the folks that don't need to be paying flood insurance aren't still within those areas themselves. The Justin Street project, you may have seen in your minutes as well, which is on South Prince Street. They've completed work on that. Nick Riego and Sons concreted that ditch line, and so that's all been completed for us. So the flooding issues that we were having in the Don Loop area, hopefully with us concreting this and from a maintenance standpoint, mowing the vegetation won't cause that water to back up and allow it to continue to flow, and so it should correct those flooding issues as well. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Justin. On the roundabout, you know, the work we're doing on it, why are people running into the west side of that thing? Are they drunk, or what's the deal?
Every report I've received, the last 5 or 6 have been DUIs.
Yep.
Is that what they are? I could not imagine trying to climb that thing.
It's lit. I mean, the only other thing that I've thought about is maybe putting up the type 1 poles with the flashing beacons on them and an advance warning, but you can see it. I mean, and I know that people in the past have questioned, why did you landscape, put the wall in the middle? Well, technically, it's out of your sight distance triangles. I mean, because when you're at a roundabout, you're not looking across it, you're looking to the left. Yeah. And so, you know, there's the truck apron that's intended for tractor trailers to be able to, their trailers to be able to ride up on and be able to maneuver around it. But then we have the wall, and it's within the standards. And so it's, as Mr. Bunch said, it's just folks, DUIs.
So this is gonna make things a whole lot better.
So, yeah, this will correct the pavement situation with the shoving and the pushing of the
deal.
asphalt.
Thank you, appreciate it, good report.
This way they have a light to aim at.
Huh?
This way they have a light to aim at.
Some of the boys they're moving.
Anything else, any other questions?
I just got a few things.
Okay.
Great American Cleanup is for the weekend of May 8th at the landfill. There'll be free dumping at the landfill for any resident from noon May 7th through noon May 10th. So just let everybody know. Vicki may have more on the particulars of when the cleanup is, and exactly, I think it's from 8 to noon on the 8th, is that correct? Yes. Okay. And that's for volunteers to come out and clean up and go with our crews and pick up the town and make it look beautiful. Also, something else at the landfill, we've applied for a few grants at the landfill. We did a RAID grant. We're applying for new roll-off containers. That's the containers that we use at the convenience center when you back up to those chains and you drop off your debris. We've applied for some of those, plus some of the closed tops. Those are the recycling containers that we have in front of Albertsons and Walmart. So if we get that grant, we'll have new, nice containers that we can use throughout the town, and whenever we decide to put up another location, we'll have some available for that. We've also applied for a grant, a landfill grant to chip seal the Hall Road from the scale house out to the new Cell 5. Right now, that's just a caliche roadway. If we get that money, we'll do a double pin chip seal, which will be just basically like a residential road. It'll cut down on the dust control that we have to do at the landfill. As you know, we have to put a lot of water on a landfill to keep the dust down for environmental reasons, and this will sure help that out. As Justin said, that the Justin Street channel, it was a great project. I don't know if everybody knows where Justin Street is. It's a very small street on the south side of the Prince Overpass there, just a few blocks down on the right. Everybody needs to go look at that channel. It come out really nice. It's going to help out with the drainage, like Justin said. We've been over there. I've been doing this for 25 years, and we were over there multiple times a year having to mow that ditch and re-plow that ditch, so this is going to sure help out a lot. I think that's what I've got.
I did fail to mention on the Martin Luther King project, we're working on setting up a public meeting. And so as soon as we have the dates and times and locations set up for that public meeting to show what the design is going to look like, I'll certainly let the committee know as well.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on
Justin, I do have one quick question. When do you think that FEMA study is supposed to happen?
Well, once we're done with the modeling and the mapping, we have to submit it to FEMA. And so then they have to review the model and sign off and agree. And if they have any questions regarding it, we have to respond to that. So I don't have an exact timeline. I'd love to be able to tell you it's going to be ready next month. But as we work through this process,
Right.
In the next couple months, we'll be submitting to FEMA themselves.
And if they do change the floodplain, like my business is in a floodplain, does that get notified that we're
You
no
won't
longer?
Yeah, you won't get notified. We'll advertise it. And so what we can do is the city of Clovis is let people know that we're in the floodplain to get with your insurance providers and say, hey, look, the maps have changed and relook at my property.
Okay.
And what
All right.
what we're trying to accomplish with a lot of it, in like where your business is located, and especially along US 60, 70, 84, that whole corridor, it's got the entire area mapped up to 2nd, 3rd, 4th Street in there. And so what we're showing in the model now is the water is actually contained within your curb lines. And so, and it is showing that in the model. And so to be able to actually take the properties themselves out of the floodplain, the road would stay in it, but the properties and obviously the ones that are paying flood insurance could potentially come out.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, anything else from Mr. Budge or Justin? Okay, Clovis Municipal Schools, update. Mr. John King.
Good morning.
Morning.
So I don't have nearly as much as Justin does, but we've got a few things going on. We just recently had the RFP approval by the board actually last month to approve Weil Construction for Berry Elementary School. So we're working on contracts from the contractor, getting all their bonds, insurances in place, so we can submit that to the state to receive their purchase order amount, so we can get notice to proceed and get started on the classroom addition, Phase 1 classroom addition on the north side, and then the roofing and HVAC replacement and water main line replacements above ceiling within the existing building. My goal is to try to have those documents in place, purchase orders ready, so that we can start sometime in June, July at the latest. So that's my goal on that project. High school G-roof, we've been working with the state for months trying to get purchase orders in place. It was finally moved forward to sent to DFA, so I anticipate purchase orders from the state within the next few days, if not at the latest next week, so we can finally get notice to proceed and start that roofing and HVAC replacement project at the high school. Summer projects, we're going to be really busy. We have several schools that we've got our purchase orders in place, notice to proceed's ready to go. We're going to hit the ground running May 28th, which is a Friday. We're probably going to see activity 7 days a week all summer long at Sandia, Zia, Yucca, and high school DNF buildings. Those projects are going to be abatement, flooring replacement, so we're tearing up all the old VCT tile, carpet. A lot of the classrooms and areas in the schools over the years were encapsulated with carpet, so what that means is carpet was glued on top of VCT that potentially had ACM material either within the adhesive or in the tile itself. So all that material will come up down to concrete. We're going to polish a lot of the floors. Obviously, once we get the flooring up, we'll assess the condition. Hopefully, corridors and most of the classrooms are in good enough condition that we can polish them. If not, we'll be looking at other alternatives such as LVT and some other low maintenance, highly durable flooring materials. We're going to be using those in, for example, high school DNF. There's a lot of science labs in there, a lot of built-in casework, so we're going to be utilizing LVT in those areas as well. Window and door replacements, Marshall, Yucca, and high school. We're going to be doing a lot of, not the entire facilities, but a good portion of them. Window and door replacement, including hardware. A lot of those are the older hollow metal core doors and frames, which tend to rot out from the inside out. So because they're hollow, you've got the heating and cooling on the inside, temperature on the outside, they condense inside, and then before you know it, you look down and you've got holes in the bottom of the frames and the doors, and so those will be replaced with extruded aluminum storefronts and fixed windows, and with the 1-inch glazing for insulating purposes. And that will take place over summer as well. The high school, we still got a few projects we're working on. Again, these are our state-funded projects, so we've got to work through that whole process as far as the documentation and working with them to get their portion of the purchase orders issued. So we have the remainder of the high school fencing, which is on the northeast corner between the tennis courts and the practice field, band practice field. We're going to extend that out towards 21st. That'll turn and connect to the CMU wall at the tennis courts with a large rolling gate at 21st Street. And then there'll be large rolling gates installed as well on the west side of the tennis courts at 21st, and then also at Purdue a double rolling gate there. We've had issues with not only traffic, you know, cutting through the high school parking lot during the day, but a lot of pedestrian traffic as well. So to secure that campus during the day when we have students there, this is something that through the securities initiative through the state, we received money from them to help in that effort to complete that fencing and gating project. As well as we're going to be adding cameras. I think it's 60, I think we're adding 63 cameras, both interior corridors and exterior around the high school to help improve security as well. So a lot of stuff going on at the high school. And then at the end of summer, when we get all this done, we've got several schools that we're going to be replacing the furniture. So student desks, chairs, teacher desks and chairs, file cabinets, bookcases, classroom furniture, that type of thing. And that's the end of my report, if you have any questions.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. King? Good report. Sounds to me like y'all are on top of it.
Gonna be busy this summer.
Okay, anything else about for the good of the order? Anyone have anything? Next meeting, time and date, May 26th, 2021. And
8:30.
8:30, yep. Okay, if there's nothing else, we're adjourned.
Okay.